Welcome to economics class with Dr. Adebayo. Today's topic is inflation and inflation. Inflation is a number that concerns economists and greatly challenges the central banks, and because it's one of the most talked about economic concepts, and that's why most of the governments of every economy would really want to achieve price stability, because without price stability, it simply means there's inflation, and whenever there's inflation, it affects the living standards of the citizens. So what is inflation itself? Inflation is defined as a steady and persistent increase in the general level of prices. It is a rate at which your money loses its ability to buy goods and services. So what am I trying to say here? Whenever there's inflation, it simply means that individuals' purchasing power reduces. So let's go further. So what are the factors that can cause inflation? We have different factors that can cause inflation. We have demand pull factor, we have we have cost push factor, we have imported inflation, and sometimes government-induced inflation. So we're going to take it one at a time. So let's start with demand pull factor. So this is demand pull factor. So what does demand pull factor means? I'm going to explain now. There is demand pull factor if aggregate demand is greater than aggregate supply, which simply means demand is exceeding supply. There's excess demand. Whenever there's excess demand, it is expected that. So what brings about excess demand? Mostly excess demand is as a result of increase in money supply within the economy, or probably access to easy credit within the economy. And if there's accessibility to easy credit, it simply means the cost of borrowing is cheap. And if the cost of borrowing is cheaper, it makes people to want to borrow more. And because they are able to borrow more, too much money will be chasing too few goods, and excess demand will pull up as a result of that. So there's too much money in the economy. People have a lot of money to spend. They are chasing few goods. So that will bring about excess demand. And if there's excess demand, it leads to an increase in price. And that is what we call demand pull inflation. I think demand pull inflation is clear. So the next one we're going to talk about is cost push inflation. So we have cost push inflation. For cost push inflation, we're simply talking about an increase in the cost of production. So mostly if firms or businesses experience an increase in their cost of production, they are likely to pass on this increase by raising the selling price of the final goods to consumers. And as soon as that is done, it brings about what we call cost push inflation. So firms will not be able to bear all the cost, because if they have to because there's what we call inverse relationship between cost and profitability. So if the cost of production is increasing, it's definitely the profitability of the business would fall. So firms would rather want to make profit. As a result of that, they would rather push the higher cost as higher prices to consumers, and that brings about cost push inflation. For demand pull, it's as a result of excess demand. For cost push, it's as a result of increasing cost of production for firms, which they have to pass on to consumers as higher prices, and that's what we call cost push inflation. That's the second point. And the third one we're going to talk about is imported inflation. So the next one I'm going to talk about is imported inflation. Now, when we talk about imported inflation, we're simply talking about importation. Simply means you're buying from abroad, you're buying from foreign businesses, you're buying from foreign countries. That is importation. And many raw materials used in the production process are imported. And when the price increases, so does the cost of production, and manufacturers are likely to increase the selling price. So if imported raw materials prices increases, it simply means it increases the cost of production for firms, and as a result of that, they have to increase their prices, and that is about importation. So if the price of imported raw materials are increasing, it simply means the cost of production for firms would increase, and that would simply increase the price of the final products. because raw materials will be converted into finished goods. So if the cost of raw materials are increasing, it means the price of finished goods would also increase. And who buys the finished goods? Consumers. And that brings about what we call imported inflation. And the last one we're going to talk about is government-induced inflation. So for government-induced inflation, we're simply talking about government, through its budgetary policy, decides to increase maybe the indirect taxes. And if government increases indirect taxes, that would reduce the price of goods and services and reduce the purchasing power of individuals. That is if government is trying to, to reduce demand within the economy. So by so doing, government might increase VAT, value-added tax. And the value-added tax increases is an indirect tax. It simply means prices would rise. And as a result of that, there's going to be what we call inflation. And another way is this. Government might want to increase spending power of customers. And if government wants to increase spending power of customers, government might lower income tax, such as payee. So if government lowers income tax, it increases the purchasing power of individuals. And if individual purchasing power increases, it simply means they will be able to buy more than what they used to buy. And that might as well lead to excess demand, bringing about demand pull inflation. So these are the causes these are the factors that brings about inflation. I remain Dr. Adebayo. Watch out for more of my videos in the next session. Bye and cheers.